Lord's is a conventional stadium system, really, and it has three main purposes. One is commentary and music for the spectators. The second is there's a whole lot of hospitality areas and restaurants and events. And most importantly, the entire system serves as the voice alarm system with the architecture of Lord's, because it's not a stadium bowl. Each stand is an individual piece of architecture and with a different sound design. We've graduated from what was originally all the amplifiers and everything all in one place through to now a state-of-the-art networked audio system with distributed racks in a dozen or so locations.
It's always grown and evolved to cope with the way the club and the cricket has evolved. So the buildings and the architecture have grown, and in the past it would have been just looking at extending services into those buildings in not necessarily the way you might approach things from the outset. When you start extending and you're adding on and you're still trying to drive it from the same location, you have all sorts of issues with finding cable routes that are protected and looking at the volt drops because of the distance that the cables have got to run in. It was quite refreshing to be able to break it into these different blocks where we can, which you can only do with a digital system, you can't really do it with an analog system. It can reflect the differences between the stands. It's allowed it to grow with the stands now, and as the site keeps evolving and keeps growing, the PA-VA system can grow and evolve with it in a very natural way.
Easier to engineer, you've got shorter speaker cable runs because the amps are much closer, which obviously is important when you're driving high power. Easier to engineer because these days we just ask for network ports to appear where we want them. This stadium is unusual in that it completely integrates with the IT system. So we're not just sharing fibers and putting racks next to each other. Amplifier racks are physically located within IT racks and going into the same switches. Both the audio equipment and the IT department monitor the system. The critical signal path runs off effectively audio department UPSs because we have to for the compliance. And that was a lot of education on both sides when we started to explain to the IT guys what audio networking was, what the requirements were, what, for want of a better word, special treatment we would need in order for it to work. And they were very receptive to that, and in return we had to understand their policy on switches, how they wanted to do things. The audio equipment is just other IT appliances here.
Remote access is great for giving value-add experiences to the client, alongside being able to do early diagnostics on issues that might arise. So when someone reports they can't hear something in an area, or that something is definitely not working and they're struggling to set up for an event, you can dial in remotely and just have a quick look. Oh yeah, I can see this amplifier is actually reporting itself offline. Can you just send someone down to check that the power's not off to that area? When we have an engineer on site who's working on something, if we need to increase the level of experience to work on that problem quickly, it doesn't need the more experienced engineer to work on site. They're able to join in on that. They work collaboratively to get to the solution quicker.
There's a lot of custom code within the QSys system. It's very handy that there's things like the plugins for the PowerSoft are just written already. We didn't have to write that. Someone's already done that for us, so the controls for the PowerSoft amps just come up automatically within QSys, and that helps with the integration a lot. We also provide feeds of the commentary into the media center, and that's all on one system, one network. We had a challenge of reducing noise pollution. We are right in the middle of residential areas here, and there used to be complaints from residents, and now there aren't. We've quadrupled the number of speakers on site. There's no large speakers here at all, nothing bigger than a 15-inch anywhere on the site. And in general, what you're listening to is considerably smaller, but you're never far from one. And so we've always used the analogy of we're not putting a big stone in a pond, we're putting lots of little pebbles in. So that enabled us to not put huge amounts of energy in one place, which helps and reduces the reflections, and also gives us an enormous amount of control, so we can fine-tune the system, to a great deal. And that's required because we have very many different types of match here. Just a few hundred people, just in one or two stands, up to a full test match with more than 30,000 people, yelling their hearts out. So we have to cope with very many different scenarios, much more than, let's say, a football stadium, which is either full or empty.
And then when it comes to a match day, the engineers will actually be on site. With the digital system, they have the ability to wander around during the beginning of the match and make level adjustments as the ground fills up and as the capacity changes, which does mean you need to have a suitable level of engineer to operate this. It's no longer one of these jobs where you can turn up and sit in a chair and just enjoy the cricket. You're an active role that you end up doing.
The other thing is this is the only cricket ground in the world where you don't bring in supplementary equipment for a T20 match. Normally there's a system of people bringing in wedge monitors and putting them around the edge of the pitch, which, to be honest, we've never thought was a good solution, but this doesn't need it. The system itself is of sufficient power and quality and has sufficient base response to do that. We also set ourselves a challenge of making it greener. It uses considerably less energy than any other stadium system that I know of. We use 10% of the power of what we did. But there's other benefits as well. We don't have to cool the rec rooms so hard. Some smaller rec rooms we have no cooling because it's not required if it's just a couple of amps. This only works, frankly, because of the extremely close relationship with the client, where there's been a huge amount of education through with the estates team that we work for, but also with the IT team. And we're planning 2-3 years ahead. We're not just saying, oh, what needs doing this year. There's a strategy, there's a plan, and that plan hasn't changed in 10 or 12 years. The objectives were safety compliance, noise pollution, quality, T20 matches, better control, more flexibility.
We're not the kind of company where you would come in and just try and win a job for that short-term gain, and I think the developments that we've seen here only come about because of those long-term relationships.